your holistic health coaching session. I'm Corrina Rachel, and I am honored to be here today with you to help you clean out your pantry, getting rid of some unhealthy items and replacing them with some more healthy, waistline-friendly items. So I went through your pantry, and unfortunately I did find a few things that we're going to want to replace. So the first thing that caught my eye was actually this huge container of whey protein powder. Now, whey protein powders are something that have become quite popular among the fitness and weight loss community. But are these really helping our health or our weight loss endeavors? An interesting question. So as you may have guessed, this is one of those problematic items that we're going to replace. But let's talk about why. So protein powder is a great example of a processed partial food. What does that mean? So if you were to think about a natural food, such as a whole grain of rice, or a whole piece or whole kernel of corn, that would be a great example of a whole food. But when you start to process those ingredients and just extract a portion of them, now you have a processed partial food. So anytime you see something that says protein isolate or protein concentrate, it means they've extracted that protein from another food, and now you're eating a concentrated partial version of the food. So as a holistic health coach, I would recommend that instead of eating a partial food, that you get your protein from whole natural foods, like vegetables, whole grains, and if you eat animal products, then meat and dairy can also be healthy protein sources for you. So because I can tell you like this powder, it's almost gone, let's replace it. So I have a few things here that I will be replacing your protein powder with. The first one is this little fruit and veggie drink. It's a little powder you just add to a glass of water or beverage of your choice. And they're just fruits and vegetables, nothing else. So it's not a protein powder per se, but it will give you the natural protein that would be present in these vegetables contained in the packet. It also gives you a great amount of complex carbohydrates. So anytime we get our carbohydrates from fruits and vegetables, this is so much more healthy for us. And it's less likely to stimulate that fat storage mechanism that is stimulated when we eat simple sugars like regular sugar, high fructose corn syrup, maltodextrin, which is just another name for sugar. And even though many of these products don't contain sugar, they do contain artificial sweeteners like sucralose and azasulfame potassium. And in my opinion, those are actually worse for you than even regular sugar. But when we get the carbs in this complex form from fruits and vegetables. It gives us good, sustainable energy. It also helps to contribute to curbing our hunger. So this is a much better thing to have before your workout or after your workout as opposed to protein powder. And the other thing I'll leave you, now this is my bag, it's almost empty, but I have a new bag for you that I'll be leaving, and that is this Kachava. So it's a meal replacement. It contains 24 grams of protein, so it's going to be on the same level with a lot of protein powders, but it also gives you all of the other components that you need in order to satisfy your micronutrient requirements, in order to give you a good, steady, sustained blood sugar response rather than a big blood sugar spike and blood sugar fall, which is where you start feeling hungry again, even shortly after eating. It also contains a lot of good, healthy fats and superfoods, which are basically just nutrient-dense foods. In fact, they're so nutrient-dense, we call them superfoods. And all of those different nutrients contained in these ingredients are so good for us to satisfy our hunger, to give us the sustained energy that we need. And again, it's very waistline friendly, blood sugar friendly. And now we just start to think with calories that are very nutrient dense. So maybe you've heard the term empty calories. Here's a great example. So I found in your pantry some Cheetos and some Fruit Loops. So here we have an example of empty calories. But what does that mean? Because clearly when you eat these foods, they're not empty, right? So an empty calorie just means that it's a calorie that still contributes to your waistline, still contributes to potentially having excess fat on the body. But why it's empty is that it does not contain very many nutrients. And again, if you think about what I said about the superfoods, they're super because they contain so many nutrients. Well, these foods that are empty calories, right? It's the opposite of the spectrum. So superfoods, lots of nutrient density, empty calories, almost no nutrients, even though they still give you those fat-causing calories. And if we look at the ingredients here, we're seeing these processed partial flours, like enriched cornmeal or corn flour blend. And essentially what you want to recognize is that when they isolate out the starchy part of the corn or the grain or whatever it is, this starchy part is what they use in these processed foods. It's what they use in white bread. And the reason that whole wheat bread is brown is because all of those other parts of the grain that are left in to that whole grain bread. But when you remove the fiber, you remove the fats, you remove the nutrients, and you're just left with the starchy part, that's how you get white bread. So this idea of processing the grain, processing the corn, isolating out the starch, or isolating out the sugar is again something we want to avoid, and instead try to opt for eating whole natural foods. So, actually eating corn would be an example. And sweet corn is really sweet and delightful. And when you eat sweet corn, you can kind of understand why they use it to make sweeteners, to make sugar. Because corn is a delightful and sweet food on its own. So a whole food alternative to cereal like this would be granola, where the whole grain is left in its whole grain form, and therefore you get a lot more protein, fiber, and nutrients. And just realize that the amount of carbohydrates and sugar in something like this makes it more of a dessert than a breakfast or a snack. And then to replace these Cheetos, I have a couple of things. So one are these cheese crisps. And there's a couple products out there like this, but it's literally 100% cheese. No other ingredients. No salt, no processed flour, no nothing. So this is a Parmesan one. It just contains Parmesan cheese, but you can find snacks like this in cheddar, in all kinds of other cheesy flavors. But here's a great example of a whole food. Granted, they crisp it, they bake it, so it's not quite how you think of cheese, but it's a whole food in the sense that they're not processing or isolating out parts of the cheese. They're just using this one single ingredient to make this little product. But if you like Cheetos, you will love these. They're amazing, crispy, very, very, very flavorful since they're just pure cheese. And because they contain some fat as well, that fat will help fill you up more quickly. So maybe you don't eat nearly as many of them. They actually design these foods specifically to try to get you to overeat these foods. There's something called vanishing caloric density that they use. It's that kind of melt in your mouth sensation that you get from this type of food. And they literally are trying to trick your brain into not realizing how much you've eaten, so that you'll eat way more calories than you actually need to without feeling full. So when you eat pure 100% cheese, it's gonna fill you up, and you're gonna find that you can't eat as many of these as you could of these, because this is an actual whole food. Okay. Now another thing that I want to offer you as an alternative for the Cheetos is just eating nuts. Nuts are a fantastic snack because they contain a lot of fat and fiber that help to satisfy your hunger and send those messages to your brain that you're full and satisfied and it's time to stop eating. So I love cashews. They're so delicious, and it's just worth pointing out that cashews, so this is a 1 ounce serving, about 20 cashews. You get 14 grams of fat, although only 2.5 of that is saturated fat. The rest is unsaturated. So 14 grams of fat to 8 grams of carbs and 5 grams of protein. So these foods that have lots and lots of protein, lots and lots of fat, and inherently they will also have fiber, fat, fiber, protein, this is like what I like to call the trifecta. If we want to be healthy, especially if we're trying to lose weight, you always want to maximize your fat, fiber, and protein because that slows down your blood sugar and it sends messages to your brain that you're full. And I think satisfying our hunger is so important in terms of helping us make good decisions. If we always feel hungry, it's very difficult to control our cravings and to make healthy choices. So I'm all about snacking on things like nuts, seeds, or even nut butters. Here I have some almond butter in this great little pouch. Makes it very easy to eat on the go or take with you in your lunch. It's a great example of a very nutrient-dense food that I encourage you to eat more of. So while we're on that topic of nuts, I did find another problematic thing in your pantry, and it's this reduced fat peanut butter. Now I know that we have been really led to believe that reduced fat foods are more healthy. They help us lose weight. But what do I think about this? The complete opposite. So let's talk about why. Number one, many of these reduced fat foods, great example of a processed partial food, because they've actually taken some of the fat that would be naturally present in the peanut and they remove it, right? Reduced fat. So there's a lot of processing involved and you no longer have the whole natural peanut. It's a partial food. Now, the second problem is that they will often add lots of sugar to try and help replace all of the flavor that is lost when they remove the fat. So, corn syrup solids is our second ingredient. So, corn syrup solid, here we have another partial food, a processed food. They've isolated parts of the corn to make it into a sweet syrup. Then they make that into a solid, and that's what you're eating. We also have those artificial sweeteners here as well. So between the sugar, we have some hydrogenated oils, some cottonseed oil, some soy protein isolate, another processed partial food. This is not the nutrient-dense food that you will get when you have something which is just pure peanut butter or pure almond butter. And if you see an ingredient list that's just almonds, this one has maple sugar, palm oil, and sea salt. But you can just see that it's a much less processed food, and it actually has a lot less sugar because they don't have to make up for the flavor lost that they get when they remove the fat. So we're going to get rid of this reduced fat peanut butter, and we're not doing the fridge today, but if you do have fat-free milk, skim milk, fat-free yogurt, I will actually replace those as well with their full fat counterpart. The natural fat that is present in the food gives you lots of nutrients, and a lot of those nutrients are what help your body to digest the protein that's in that food. A great example is the egg. You actually want all the nutrients that are contained in the yolk. And the nutrients in the yolk are what help your body to digest the protein in the white. So I recommend that you drink whole milk that you have full fat yogurt, and that if you are going to eat eggs, you eat the whole egg, not the shell, but do eat the yolk as well as the egg white for optimal health. And know that this extra addition of fat you're eating will help you fill up more quickly and more easily. So, the fats we eat are not necessarily the fats on our body. The fat on our body is mostly the unused sugar and carbohydrates that we aren't burning with athletic activity. So don't worry about eating healthy forms of fat. And basically that's just any fat which is naturally present in a food. So avocados, coconuts. Again, if you have your dairy, have it with full fat. And just recognize that those healthy fats are a very important part of a healthy diet. Okay. So, to end on a sweet note, I know you saw it coming, but we're gonna have to replace your M&Ms. I'm so sorry. So M&Ms. So M&Ms have a lot of highly processed sugar, and even though we can actually find a lot of nutrients, and even though we can find a lot of nutrients in chocolate or in cacao powder, the amount of processing that's done to conventional candies zaps away all those nutrients. So here's what we do instead. So first thing, again, this is my empty one, but I leave a full one for you in your pantry, is called Cacao Bliss. So when you see the word cacao, this symbolizes that it is an unprocessed cacao powder. And once you see cocoa on the ingredient list, or cocoa powder, that just means that the raw cacao has undergone some type of processing. But typically it is that processing where we lose some of the nutritional benefits. So this raw cacao retains all these wonderful health benefits in the cacao bean, like minerals, lots of magnesium. It also contains a blend of some other superfoods, so this is one of my favorite things. This will be a great benefit for you. You can use it mixed with milk or water to have as a hot or cold beverage. You can also use it in your baking, and I actually have this little trick where I use a little maple syrup and then stir in the cacao bliss to make like chocolate sauce. And then this chocolate sauce I can put over my healthy ice cream. And healthy ice cream is basically just taking some frozen fruit and then some kind of cream, either coconut cream or heavy whipping cream if you're someone who eats dairy products. This heavy whipping cream can be very good. It's very high in fat, right? And then just your fruit in the blender. You could add some cream or coconut milk to it to make it even more creamy. And you basically just have this fluffy, fruity, nice cream or healthy ice cream. And then I can pour my Cacao Bliss chocolate syrup over that. It is very good. And then this other thing I want to show you is a little bit easier to eat. is already made into a little product. It's this bark thin chocolate. So it's like a chocolate bark type of thing, right? But it has in it coconut and almonds. So almonds are one of the highest protein, or I should say highest ratio of protein to carbs in terms of nuts. So almond is very, very healthy nut to have. It's because that high protein and fiber content, it's very good at stimulating that satisfaction of hunger. So here we have our dark chocolate, which has less sugar added to it, then less milk added to it than milk chocolate. And it also has this coconut. Again, it's a very healthy source of fat. Add some flavor, some sweetness, and some nutrients. And that almond, which gives us the protein, the fiber, and a bit of healthy fats that helps to make this a little bit more friendly to our blood sugar, right? We get a more slow release of glucose in our bloodstream when we have some of that fiber, fat, and protein with our source of sweetness. So I actually still have a couple of other items here, but I think that we've covered enough ground for today, and I'll go ahead and save the rest of these items for our next session. I know that it can feel a bit overwhelming to think we have to change everything that we're eating, but instead of seeing it as a challenge, I want you to simply see it as a journey. And each small step that we make towards our final goal is oh so meaningful and important. So even if you just reach for any one of these items I'm leaving for you in place of the unhealthy item, then that is a great step in the right direction. Don't feel like you have to do everything at once. Instead, just choose the things that seem the most simple and the most at your fingertips. And over time, you'll make one little change, two little change, three little changes. And before you know it, you will have transitioned your lifestyle and your way of eating in a way that gives you more energy, more positivity, and just helps you feel so good that that will motivate you to make even more healthy decisions. I'm so honored to be on this journey with you toward improving your health, and I can't wait to see you again at our very next session.
If you enjoy our ASMR massage and back tickling videos, I hope you'll take a moment to join me on Psychetruthpatrons.com, where you will find dozens of videos that we've either had to remove from YouTube or that we'll never post on YouTube. And of course, there's plenty of bloopers and behind the scenes as well, so you can see everything that goes into our video creation process. YouTube has made it excessively difficult for us to survive